This class is concerned with different types of knowledge. Now we're going to start with various definitions of knowledge and look at what different writers have said about what knowledge is. So one particular view is to say that information is a flow of messages, while knowledge is created by that flow of information anchored in the belief and commitment of its holder. This understanding emphasizes that knowledge is essentially related to human action. It sounds complicated, but really what it's saying here is that information is a flow of messages. It's the components of communication. It's what communication is composed of. It's a flow of messages. So that's what information is. Knowledge is created by that flow of information, but it's anchored in the belief and commitment of the holder. So knowledge is the information that's received, the flow of messages, and then it means something to the receiver. It has an impact on the receiver. It adds to the receiver's understanding of a situation. And when that happens, it becomes knowledge. So knowledge is the end product of the flow of information through the communication channel. And when it's interpreted and understood by the receiver, and it fits into how the receiver can interpret the information, fits in the context of the receiver's beliefs and attitudes and their experiences. When the receiver interprets the flow of information, it becomes knowledge. So that's one particular view. Now, a different view, and slightly more detailed view, could be knowledge is a flux mix of framed experiences, values, contextual information, and expert insight that provides a framework for evaluating and incorporating new experiences and information. Now let's just stop there at the first paragraph. Knowledge is a flux mix. Flux means it's a flow. It's a flow of framed experiences. It's experiences, but they are gathered together under, if you like, different headings. They are gathered together in terms of their context. It's also a flow of values, people expressing what they believe and what they how they interpret the world or interpret situations. And it's information in terms of the context in which it is being used. So business information is in the context of business. It's not really that useful to talk about business education in the context of other areas of activity, of life. So it's expert insight that provides a framework for evaluating and incorporating new experiences and information. It's a flow of knowledge, of framed experiences, a flow of knowledge based on experiences, based on values, and based on contextual information. Contextual information within that setting, the setting that's under consideration. Business information within the context of business. Health information in the context of health. Engineering in the context of engineering, and so on. So it's the flow of framed experiences, values, contextual information, and expert insight that provides a framework for evaluating and incorporating new experiences and information. So the receiver of knowledge can use the knowledge and add it to his or her stock of information and helps them to interpret and understand new information when it arises. And this becomes knowledge, because once the new information is understood, it's added to the stock of our knowledge. We can then use that in the future. Now the second paragraph here, it says, it originates and is applied in the minds of knowers. Well, that's where knowledge resides. It's in our minds. In organizations, it often becomes embedded not only in documents or repositories, but also in organizational routines, processes, practices, and norms. So knowledge is within our minds, but there is a view here that organizations who have experience in, let's say, making a particular product or producing a particular service, they have worked out the best practice, the best way to do it. And that in itself is knowledge. So it's almost as if the organization has knowledge. In fact, to be fair, organizations don't have knowledge. Only the individuals within the organizations have knowledge. But in the context of the business, it seems as if the business has a particular set of processes, a particular way of doing things, which constitutes its knowledge base. So knowledge is the end product of the flow of information. It's when the information is incorporated into our minds. It's within the context of whatever was sent, whatever information was sent down the communications channel. And once it's in our minds, it becomes our knowledge. We can then use it in the future to perhaps problem solve. Now, understanding knowledge. Well, knowledge is human understanding of a particular interest or field. It's our understanding of a particular interest or field. That's what knowledge is. It's our interpretation. It's our interpretation of what we see around us, and we are using our knowledge, our accumulated experiences, and what we've read and studied, and what we've observed and experienced. We are using this knowledge to interpret what's happening around us. And it resides in our minds, and it is personal to our development. So each of us has a knowledge base. We start to build our knowledge base when we were infants, learning to walk, learning to talk, learning to handle the environment in which we found ourselves, later at school, and then through the education process, and also through the experiences we've had out of school, experiences with friends or in the community. And this all constitutes our knowledge base. An individual's values, beliefs and integrity are all associated with knowledge. It consists of a person's perception, skills, training, common sense and experience. External influences and the environment allow individuals to draw conclusions. So all of our values, our beliefs, are all associated with our knowledge, which has been built up over years of reading, learning, observing, experiencing. And it consists of our personal perceptions, how we see things, what our skills are, what our training is. Common sense in terms of what is obvious, and our experiences. So when we add all of this together, we add our experiences, our common sense, our training, our skills, our perceptions. When we add it all together, it forms the basis of our knowledge. And we've also, of course, got external influences, not just what's happening within our heads. We have the environment, and the environment is the wider world in which we live, and that also influences our experiences and brings us into contact with new ideas, which enhance our knowledge base, which challenge our knowledge base, which may destroy part of it and replace it with something new. And that's the way the world is. We are constantly updating our knowledge base. Knowledge is derived from information, and this information is stored and later utilized to offer solutions to complex and ambiguous decisions. Well, knowledge must be based on something, so it has to be based on information. And information is what we find useful. It's communicated. There's a sender and a receiver. We sometimes make observations and get our knowledge from observations. So we process the information, and when we're happy that the information is solid, it's reliable, it's good, it becomes part of our knowledge. And we store it away because that is our knowledge. The information which came from experiences, reading, communications, contact with others, observations about the world, whatever the source, once it becomes information and once it becomes reliable, we store it away and it becomes our knowledge. So knowledge can be classified then. We have different types of knowledge. We've got shallow knowledge, knowledge which is readily available without much thought. Shallow knowledge, just very, very basic knowledge about if we cease to support an object and it's heavier than air, it'll fall downwards. It's shallow knowledge. It's something we all observe. We know it as gravity. It's shallow knowledge. Deep knowledge is acquired after years of experience and is useful in complex situations. Deep knowledge could be academic, it could be some extremely complicated theory in mathematics or computers or economics or law or whatever it is. We have some deep knowledge of some situation. And the deep knowledge is not obvious. It's something that we've worked out, that we've worked on and thought about until we have complete mastery and understanding of the thing, of the situation, and then we store it away as our knowledge. And we can classify knowledge on the left-hand side of this particular slide. We can break down knowledge into different parts: procedural knowledge, declarative knowledge, semantic knowledge, and episodic knowledge. Now we'll look at each of these in turn, just briefly, to see what each is meant, what's meant by each of them, I should say. We'll start with procedural knowledge. Knowledge acquired through labour-intensive activities, for example, using machinery or working in a factory. Procedural knowledge is applying an understanding of how to do a task or following correct procedures. Procedures are normally worked out from experience. Companies work out what is the best way of making a particular product. They work out a procedure. The raw materials must pass from one department to the next department to the following department and so on. And different processes are performed at different parts, and they're constantly looking out to improve the process. But there is a procedure. If within an office, the procedure could be if someone receives the information and records it and somebody else processes it in some way and someone else checks it, and there's a procedure. And it's quite a, generally speaking, a labour-intensive activity. It involves people checking and making sure. So the best procedure is worked out and used. Procedural skills sometimes use psychomotor skills. They involve people doing particular processes and having the skills to do particular processes. And sometimes the introduction of robotics is expensive. Getting specialized robots designed, the technology involved in robotic construction is expensive. Getting it tested, getting it installed, very expensive procedures. The human body is a very flexible tool. We can use our arms, our eyes, our hearing, and we have great dexterity in the way we're able to move. So sometimes companies employ people to perform tasks that could be performed by robots, but because of the costs involved, people may be cheaper to employ and cheaper to engage in that sense. When the tasks are completely automatic, then it's very dehumanizing for the person. It's very shallow knowledge that's been used. A person standing on a line watching components pass is not using a lot of their human capacity. They're only using very shallow knowledge, looking for some particular component that's been badly made or should be rejected or whatever they're doing. It's a very shallow job and very dehumanizing. So the introduction of robotics takes away that very boring task. On the other side of the coin, of course, it means that somebody's job has been lost, and unless that person improves his or her skills, then they will be unemployed. So there is a balance there to be struck. So for example, unconsciously holding the handrail when using an escalator. Now, these things are shallow knowledge. We sometimes do it without thinking. There are many parts to our lives that are programmed in, and we behave in certain ways. When we're crossing the road, we look for traffic. We look automatically for traffic. We don't have to stop by the side of the road sometimes and think, what should we do next? Should we look for traffic or not? And have a debate. We just simply do it automatically, very quickly. It's procedural knowledge. Learning a new language is much more complex, but it's procedural. It builds step upon step, building a vocabulary, building a knowledge of grammar, of structure, of usage, of idioms, of expressions, of intonation, and so on. And building that is procedural. Once one part is learned, it may be used to develop a second part, which is slightly more complex. And in this way, a more detailed knowledge of the language is built up. It's procedural. And there are many parts to our lives which are procedural. Many parts to the way in which we live. We don't have to think almost about how to do certain tasks. There is a procedure to follow. Now, declarative knowledge, well, unlike procedural knowledge, this is unconscious. Declarative knowledge is referred to as awareness knowledge. We're aware of something. So we don't really have to think about it. We're just simply aware of the situation. Individuals can easily abstract and discuss. It's information that they know, so they can confidently and consciously discuss with others. So it's in our minds. These are abstract ideas, but there are ideas in our heads that we can then extract and discuss with others. It's not procedural. These are what we've got. These are bits of knowledge we've got. And we're able to, if you like, take them out sometimes and discuss them with others. They may be quite abstract ideas. Ideas about politics or about religious beliefs, or about music, or about art, or they're about some aspect of our lives, perhaps. They may be about the way society is running, or technology, or whatever. But we're able to discuss them and simply extract them and deal with them with others. It's sometimes seen as shallow knowledge, as information can easily be recalled because it's simple and uncomplicated. No matter what the topic, we don't have to have a profound knowledge of politics or technology or whatever it is. We just have to know certain parts to it in order for us to be able to discuss it, to talk to others about it. So it's sometimes considered as shallow knowledge, very basic knowledge, knowledge which binds all of us together. We've all got some idea about the technology. We've all heard of computers. We all know roughly speaking, what computers can do. We may not be expert at programming a computer, and we don't want to be. We just want to talk about the use of computers, perhaps. So it's quite basic knowledge, very straightforward knowledge. And information is logged in short-term memory, which means it's only available for a brief time. It might be that we have an idea about computers again, but it's something we just heard recently and we'll talk about for the next week, and then we forget about it. We move on, we hear something else, and we'll talk about that. So it's short-term. It could be, as I said here, memorizing a phone number. We don't hold a phone number in our head for the rest of our lives, chances are. We hold it in our head for a day or two until we use it. If we want to keep the phone number, we may write it down and put it into a diary or into a journal or into a phone book. But declarative knowledge could be very straightforward information about any topic, but usually it's ephemeral, it's short-lived. We find out something about sport. Some team has won a particular match. We're able to talk about the tactics on the match because we've read about it or we've seen it on television. But in 6 months' time, it'll have faded away. So it'll have been replaced by other bits of sporting information. Other sporting events will have replaced it. It may come back to us if someone mentions it in the distant future. It may, oh yes, I can remember that. It was a long time ago, but I remember that particular incident. But generally speaking, it's short-term and it's quite shallow knowledge. It's very simple, straightforward knowledge. Now, semantic knowledge. Well, moving towards deeper knowledge. Semantic knowledge is organized knowledge and embedded in the long-term memory. This is much deeper. These are more profound events, more important events and more important pieces of knowledge that we keep stored away in our heads. This is long-term. It's, generally speaking, accumulated over many years. We may have an interest in a particular topic, like, say, I don't know, economic theory. We have an interest in it, and we build up ideas about economic theory over years. We read articles about economics, and we understand how different parts of the economy fits together and why certain things are important and other things are less important, and so on. We build up this knowledge over many years, and we build up a set of facts to illustrate the point, and we work out the relationships between certain variables, between certain parts of the economy. We build up a language. We know how to describe what is investment and what is inflation and what is the velocity of circulation of money. We have a certain vocabulary. So this could apply in any area. It could apply to fixing the car. We build up our knowledge of the engine. We know what the carburetor is, and we know what the pistons are, and we know what... We've built up our knowledge, but we've built it up over a period of time. We've built it up through experience, through exposure to the areas and to the language, the vocabulary. We know what a piston is. We know what the carburetor is. We know what the word means. And we know the relationships between carburetors and pistons and so on. We have quite sophisticated knowledge, and over time we're adding to our knowledge and getting more sophisticated. So semantic knowledge is long-term, and it's much deeper than the previous types of knowledge. We're able to analyze our environments and make logical assumptions by using knowledge that has been stored. We're much more capable of using our knowledge because it's long-term. We have greater experience, a greater store of knowledge, and therefore we're able to use this to analyze situations. When something happens in that particular area, we're able to offer some analysis. What could be causing it? What's likely to happen? What is the situation? We're able to offer suggestions based on our knowledge, because our knowledge is deep and it's long term. We've added to our knowledge over a long period of time. The example I say here is, for example, the application of learning styles in the classroom. Well, tutors, teachers, lecturers, they have different styles of teaching, and they're constantly looking for the right style to meet the requirements of the students. But the tutors, the teachers, will have many styles of delivery, many styles of teaching, and will pick the one that's most appropriate under the conditions they find themselves working in, given the nature of the subject they're trying to teach and the environment in which they find themselves. Now all of that is semantic knowledge. It's the tutors or the teachers using their stock of knowledge, and which is quite profound because it's built up over a long period of time. They're using that knowledge in the most appropriate fashion. The last type is episodic knowledge. Now, this knowledge has been captured through experiential information. All experiences are organized in sequences and logged in terms of long-term memory. Episodic knowledge is having experiences, reflecting on the experiences, going back to Cobb's learning cycle, which is the subject matter of the videos elsewhere, but reflecting on our experiences and trying to abstract from the experiences. What did we learn? What did the experience teach us? So knowledge is captured through experiences. When we try to perform a particular task and we fail, we gain knowledge. Why did we fail? Think about it. What happened? If we were to do it again, how would we improve the situation? How would we maximize our chances of success? So we're looking at our experiences and reflecting on our experiences, questioning our experiences, and building up knowledge as a consequence. Episodic knowledge is deeper knowledge as information, and it's stored for many years and takes individuals time to recall, process, and discuss their knowledge. Episodic knowledge it's constantly coming at us. We're constantly having experiences. We have experiences all the time in our everyday lives. We have experiences in terms of talking to others and talking about their experiences. We read about different situations and what happened. And it's like having experiences for ourselves, except we're reading about other people's experiences. But it's adding to our stock of experiences. So we're getting wiser as we get older. We have more experience. However, because we have so many experiences, and if we haven't properly analyzed them and organized them in our heads, it can be difficult to sort out, to recall, and to discuss all of the implications of certain situations. It's important to have clarity in terms of recall and of analysis. It's important to have the experiences, analyze the experiences, reflect on the experiences, and then get them organized in a sense. Get them filed away in our heads appropriately so that they are easy to recall. And the best way to do that, of course, is to talk about the experiences with others and to ensure that there is clear understanding of the experience. We normally deal with this knowledge through scenarios, for example, and examples. Tools such as cameras, recorders to capture the knowledge. Episodic knowledge, looking at a particular situation, we look at the whole scenario. What happened? What caused it? What was the situation and what was the outcome? Look at the scenario. Look at the whole environment. Look at examples. What is this an example of a situation we saw earlier? Is this an example of a situation we saw last year? And use tools such as cameras and recorders to capture the knowledge. So this is really using our experiences. There's a good source for information on this topic, and that's really all I'm going to do on this topic. So I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.